Today, I wanted to teach you a little bit more about how Google works because Google has been such a transformational tool for schools. Before we had the internet, I used to, when I taught in the 80s, I would have to have the resources in my classroom, whether it was videotape, whether it was books, um, and if not, I might have to go down to the library. That was all the resources I had access to. Well, now after the internet, we have lots more resources available to us. So, a little history of search engine, which also kind of tells you the history of the internet. When the search engines began in the 1990, I don't know if you remember, there was a browser called Netscape way back when, Netscape 1.0. I remember when it came out. I remember I went to my grad school I think it was in '89, something like that. Archie and Veronica, all these terms. Gopher, there was ways of searching with Turbo Gopher, I remember, was pretty popular. I'm just going to try to show you 94. Yahoo, here we go, about 1994. That was what it was about. Yahoo was huge. And as time went on, there's other search engines that came into play. Alta Vista, you may have heard of. Maybe you used it, maybe you didn't. But I'm just trying to show you that Google didn't even exist till '98. That's just over 20 years ago. And so things have changed rapidly in 20 years. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, and they continue to change. There's always constantly change in search engines. There's competition. As we get a little further along, MSN, which is had their own search engine, and then before long, I think Bing comes along. I don't remember when that happens. Let's see. Microsoft comes out with Bing, but before that, which was really nice, if you type something, they'll have suggestions. It was 2008. That was just over 10 years ago. Google will give you, but here's Bing. Bing shows up on the scene. Microsoft's trying to get into the game. It's still a good search engine, but the dominant one is still Google. Yahoo just got recently bought by Verizon, I believe. They lost a lot of value over the years. They were number one, but Google built a better product, I guess. And I think it doesn't even mention here, but even DuckDuckGo, there are some privacy browsers where privacy is becoming more important. And so search engines haven't been around that awful long, and about the same time as the internet, maybe a little after, but they were trying to search resources online even back in 1990. So I think it's important for teachers, and more importantly too, that teachers teach students how to search. All too often we think students can search, they can sit down at their computers real quick, they're whizzes, but believe it or not, they've got some things to learn. And so what I'm going to try to do is teach you first and hope that you can teach students how search works. Maybe it's not this presentation, but it's more of things to think about as we get deeper into the presentation. I'm going to, on this video you're going to watch here in a minute, Google's going to explain how they index the internet and how search works. And they're going to talk about how this works so you get results. So let's watch this. It's a YouTube clip.
Short class. I found a great video done by my colleague Matt Cutts, who also works in search. Here's Matt Cutts telling you how search actually works.
Hi, my name is Matt Cutts. I'm an engineer in the quality group at Google, and I'd like to talk today about what happens when you do a web search. The first thing to understand is that when you do a Google search, you aren't actually searching the web. You're searching Google's index of the web, or at least as much of it as we can find. We do this with software programs called spiders. Spiders start by fetching a few web pages. Then they follow the links on those pages and fetch the pages they point to, and follow all the links on those pages and fetch the pages they link to, and so on, until we've indexed a pretty big chunk of the web. Many billions of pages stored across thousands of machines. Now, suppose I want to know how fast a cheetah can run. I type in my search, say cheetah running speed, and hit return. Our software searches our index to find every page that includes those search terms. In this case, there are hundreds of thousands of possible results. How does Google decide which few documents I really want? By asking questions, more than 200 of them, like, how many times does this page contain your keywords? Do the words appear in the title? In the URL? Directly adjacent? Does the page include synonyms for those words? Is this page from a quality website, or is it low quality, even spammy? What is this page's page rank? That's a formula invented by our founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, that rates a web page's importance by looking at how many outside links point to it and how important those links are. Finally, we combine all those factors together to produce each page's overall score and send you back your search results, about half a second after you submit your search. At Google, we take our commitment to delivering useful and impartial search results very seriously. We don't ever accept payment to add a site to our index, update it more often, or improve its ranking. Let's take a look at my search results. Each entry includes a title, a URL, and a snippet of text to help me decide whether this page is what I'm looking for. I also see links to similar pages, Google's most recent stored version of that page, and related searches that I might want to try next. And sometimes, along the right and at the top, I'll see ads. We take our advertising business very seriously as well, both our commitment to deliver the best possible audience for advertisers and to strive to only show ads that you really want to see. We're very careful to distinguish your ads from regular search results. And we won't show you any ads at all if we can't find any that we think will help you find the information you're looking for, which in this case, the cheetah's top running speed, is more than 60 miles an hour. Thanks for watching. I hope this made Google a little bit more understandable.
All right, so it's whenever you do Google search, it's
Hi,
really against.
welcome back. This is 1.4,
let me
what I
switch
call
back
the
to
art
there.
of keyword choice. And the reason I say it's the art is that choosing keywords...
That I was actually learned some of this. Google actually has an online course, and that was kind of how I learned more about Google. So, but back to, let's talk about how it works. It's basically, it's like a database of, it indexes everything that it can get a hold of, and then you run a search against this database, and it takes you to those pages, and it ranks it in a certain way. And there's controversy over sometimes how things are ranked, whether or not their advertising has an influence on what you end up seeing. There are companies that pay to advertise, and so there's some controversy. But just giving you an overall idea about Google, and they index, they have these machines that index the web. It takes time. It just doesn't do it automatically. And that brings me to the next question. Let's talk about Facebook. On the left, hopefully you've seen this screen where you have a privacy tab where it says who should see your posts on Facebook. I set mine usually on friends. The question is, can Google index Facebook? Now that you have an answer, the answer is no, because what it's called is kind of like a silo. Facebook's kind of created their own little niche of the web that's kind of walled off. When the internet was first created, it was supposed to be kind of open and everybody can see everything, and away from like the AOL. If you remember AOL, they used to have AOL, had all their content. You had to log in, and only the people, if you could log into the system, could you see it. Well, that's what Facebook basically has done. And so what about Twitter on the right there? Something similar to that. You can kind of set it up, your privacy and such, that Google could index it, but Twitter would prefer, kind of like Facebook, to have you go in and to their site, and then they can control so Google doesn't get the advertising. So when you search things, know that you're not getting the entire internet out there. There are walled gardens or that they don't have access to. And also know that privacy, one of the things that's scary is when you upload pictures, those kind of things, it can put the location of when and the time that you did it. So if somebody could search that quickly enough, they could find out where you are. Oh, you're on vacation. Oh, now I'll come and rob you, kind of thing. So you got to be really careful about um, information that Google might be able to index, and even do you trust all your friends? And the same thing if you think about Instagram and some of these other services. I think Facebook owns Instagram. It's kind of a walled garden. So the question I want you to think about is, just because Google has access to lots of stuff, it's not necessarily everything. It depends if it's the information you've made public or private. And I think there's a web page here I was going to show about somebody was asking about their Instagram profile not showing up in Google. Well, it's because you didn't have your settings set right. And there are ways of doing these kinds of things. So back to that's a little bit about Google. So I guess the first thing I see people do, and including myself at times, you're looking for something, and before you even get you're ready to go to Google, man, you're typing in something and boom, you're off to the races. And what I'm saying is there's sometimes that you need to slow down. And if you have a simple search like what's the capital of Kansas, you could type into Google capital Kansas, boom, real quickly, Topeka pops up. I get that. You don't need to slow down for that. But there are times where I believe we should be using advanced search. When you want to tell a student, I want you to get the following sources, or I want you to have multiple sources or specific resources, possibly even. And I want you to, before you give a research project, they need to think about, well, what kind of information out there might have the answers to my question? What if I just search those and not the entire internet? We've all had searches that have 70 million results. You don't have time to go through 70 million. Most people just barely even go past the first page if they're lucky. And one of the things we don't do very well at all is we stay within the United States of America. We do not necessarily look outside of our country. And maybe you do, and that'd be great, but I'm going to try to impress upon you a little bit more about that. And then sometimes you just after some current information, instead of I don't need to look at everything on that's indexed, Google's indexed in the past 20 years. I want to know what happened within the last 24 hours. And so I'm going to make a case for using advanced search. And then this advanced search feature, which you may have used in the past, I think we need to use it more with students and have them slow down a little bit. So before we get into too much about Google searching, I think this will kind of warm us up. We're going to learn how to search images on Google. Does anybody remember how we do that? That's right. You go to images.google.com, and we're going to do an advanced image search. What I want you to do is try to find this animation that's free to share and use. So, but first let's take a look at, we'll go back and we will look at images. I'm going to go in here. I'm using Firefox today, but it doesn't matter. Images.google.com. And this is the typical one. You could just say tornado and away you go. But what I'm saying is I want you to use advanced. They used to, I thought, had a little button that said advanced. Now you have to go down to the bottom right where it says settings and do advanced search. So with advanced search, which you have a lot more control over, and over here to the right they tell you how it works. If this exact word or phrase, you could put that in there. If you get some things in your search that you don't want, you can put those here. If you want color or black and white, the type of image, and if I remember right, I'm looking for an animated image. Okay, I want it to move because that just is the type of thing. So down here, you have an option for animation. Then you can choose any region. It could just be United States or anywhere. You're not too picky. Then I want you to kind of think about the site or domain. This is, if you don't learn anything else about Google, this same feature, these kind of settings are in advanced search for a typical Google search, not just images. Learn about the site command. And here you don't have to know how to type it like site colons, whatever. You just put in the site that you want. And so as we're looking for a tornado, possibly what we could do, we're looking for this tornado animation. Think to yourself, where might I find something like that? Let's just say, keep it local here in Topeka. Maybe we want to just look on wibw.com and all these words, any of these words, maybe a tornado, it could be type or between the words you want, or what else could you call it? Let's just start with tornado or twister. And let's get an animation type of image. And this may not get us, but I'm going to start with this. And then down here, as you go further down, file type. If you know anything about animation, we'll leave it in any format, but generally you're going to end up with a GIF file. That's an animated file. Down here, you want to be able to freely use it and share it. So you don't just take everything off the internet unless those resources are available to you that say they are. So let's just do a quick search here. Didn't find anything. So it's like, okay, that's a little bit too specific. wibw didn't. But let's type over here, they talk about .gov. Well, maybe .gov, something in the government, websites. Let's take a look at there, .gov, and you can kind of start seeing some twister, and hopefully we'll find some twisters. And label for images, tornado, or I probably didn't need to put twisters. And you see how it's writing it up there above, .gov. That didn't seem to find it. Let's see, we can find, let's go back, twister, or tornado, let's just see if we do tornado. Let's just see anywhere. Animated, maybe that's what we should do instead of just locking in. So now we're starting to at least see some weather type of things. And believe it or not, this is the animation, I believe, that had the little road in it. If we go back to here. But the point is, sometimes what I was trying to show you with the search, you can learn how, students do not know how to do this. Learn how to use the domain. That's the most powerful thing right there. You can limit it to, if you're at cjonline.com, something was written, or maybe a trusted resource is whatever, the Smithsonian. You can have a domain. Learn how this works. Now, as you do it, it may put it out. I just think going to advanced search, you just have to fill in the blanks. And I think that's the easiest way to do it. So that was the first problem. I kind of helped you out with that one. Let's go ahead and play my file again and go past this. And we'll go on to the next one. This is a problem for you, and I'm not going to tell you how to solve this one. This is a Corvette. I want you to find a picture of a Corvette that is green, free to share, and it was posted in the last year. Now I'll give you 30 seconds here to start, see if you can find that particular car or one that's similar to that. So we're looking for a green Corvette. I'll give you a hint. The trick is over here you can choose a color. Choose green, and it's not animated. And you go, well, how do I find it? What was the question was posted in the last year? So you don't see anything about time. So we want it to free, share, modified. I think that's the right one. Corvette. Your search did not match it. So, did I spell it? Free to share or modify. Free to share or modify. Not just a GIF file. We want a picture, not an animation. So I had that from my last search. So then we're starting to get closer, and here's the additional tools that we might have posted in the last year. So that's kind of, and I think it's somewhere in here. The green Corvette is. Yeah, there it is, right there. So that's the answer to that question. But I was going to have you see if you could find it. But I'll give you a little. So there's a few more ways to go about searching. But let's move on to, let's say we're searching for other things besides pictures. Again, we want to learn more about the site or domain. I've already talked about that. And this time I'm going to focus more on country codes and those kind of things. So let's pop out and go back to here and just go to Google, like we're going to do a normal Google search. Over here, this isn't images.google, this is just Google. Hit settings, advanced search. So the things I want to talk about here are, this looks very similar to looking for pictures, right? The exact words and quotes, it gives you examples, none of these words. You can choose which language you choose it in. The nice thing is if you choose it in certain languages and you get results, Google will translate it. There's usually a little button that says translate. So take advantage of that. Different regions, when it was last updated, maybe recently, last 24 hours. The cite command, again, that's the big thing that we want. Sometimes if you want it, remember the page rank, they were talking about whether it's in the title, anywhere on the web page, maybe it's in the title of the page if you're looking for something. In the file type, you can choose whether it's Excel, PowerPoints, those kind of things. And again, the licensing. And so that's kind of back to here. What I'm trying to get at here is learning about the site or domain. Now we have one for country codes. Now, why am I doing that? So let's go to country codes. When I click that, did you know what our country code technically is? Let's go to United on this website. And again, I'm going to send a PDF out to everyone with all the links. This countrycode.org.us. If we are searching, we want to limit things. Let's go advanced search. If I want to limit things to .us, that would limit it to only United States. And you go, well, I never see .us. You see HoltonKS.net. It doesn't go .us. And ours, by default, that's kind of the way it works. But let's see if we can find, let's do France. Their country code is .fr. So let's say I'm looking for results and I want to know from the French perspective. I don't want to hear anything from the United States. I want it ends with .fr for like France, and you could do search that way. So that's kind of what I'm focused on there. You've got to know more about country codes. It's a top level domain. So then you need to think about, here's the first question. You want to hire someone. You want to do kind of like a background check. You don't want to hire and pay money, but you want to at least check them out, see if there's somebody you want to hire. Well, let's whether it's a babysitter, whoever, find out more about them. A lot of kids, you might think about, okay, well, this kid probably is on Facebook or Instagram. You could search there. Google, you could search, but it may not get any of those instant results. Twitter, same sort of thing. Are they careless and they aren't private, so forth? Don't keep their content private. You need to, and then you might want to search what kind of site do you want to look at? And so I want you to think about that problem, but he had a different problem. What about basketball? I want to find all the information last week about Holton basketball. Well, how would you do that with Google Advanced Search? So maybe we'll go back to Holton basketball here. And again, let's say current basketball, Holton. A lot of times you can just put this in, but you want current scores. So maybe within the past 24 hours, hopefully they've indexed the pages since then. Basketball scores, I'd rather just get it from maybe CGA Online or in Topeka, and we're really not going to use it. I'm just wanting to know the information. I'm not putting it in a presentation, so I don't need to filter it by license. And Holton basketball, it did not give me quite what I wanted. In the last 24 hours, they take the terms, see how they're not next to each other. That wasn't very good, so that doesn't tell me enough. Maybe I need to do it within the past week because I know there's some things happened in Holton box scores. I was more after the box scores, but I guess since today is Sunday and that was Friday, 24 hours doesn't do me much good. But you kind of get an idea. And as you look up here, this is what's going to happen. Normally you go to Google. If you were to type the same thing, I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to go to Google, and you just type it right there without going to advanced search. You put in that site, that magic word site : that only looks in one place. It gives you the exact same results as if you would have gone into advanced search. But in case you don't remember all the terms, you just type in, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking that the advanced search is good for students to use. And I think teachers need to help them understand more about how advanced search works with some examples. Let me go into, again, we did an overview of advanced search, the site command. The country code is going to help you out here on one of my questions. And so you want to hire someone, what would you look for to be different? Information about basketball scores, tweets from Donald Trump regarding wall funding. Can we get that from Google? Yes or no? Now, I don't know if Donald Trump posts it to where it's indexed by Google or not. If he does not, then you would have to just use Twitter. So I don't know that. You might check that out and let me know if you can find out about Donald Trump wall funding tweets from it. So I would limit it to twitter.com as my domain. What if I want to learn more about mad cow? You know, mad cow is kind of a nasty disease. I know I don't know anything about it. Let's talk about it. For your kids, just go plopping in and hopping onto the computer and go to Google and type mad cow and hit return and get, well, let's see how many results we get. Let's just try it. Let's do what kids do. They go to Google, type mad cow, and up at the top, 74 million results. Now, do you realistically think that maybe Google's got the magic in there and they try to help get the right stuff? Maybe they, their page rank and all that. But maybe we ought to give them a help. I think when you get 74 million results, you're doing something wrong. So Google, I'm going to go back and hit the settings, advanced search. Let's go back to mad cow. Let's talk about mad cow. Well, we know what mad cow is. We're definitely interested in that. But let's talk about sites or domains. Well, me personally, I guess I still trust our government. I think I would first of all limit it to .gov. Could be, for example, I don't know, whatever it is. .gov is usually the health department, those kind of things. The government institutions is .gov. Now the trick is, what is the equivalent of .gov, .edu, those kind of things in different countries? Just because we think it's always .gov, that's not always the same in other countries. So those are some of the issues you run into when you start trying to research other countries. But right now, .gov, and you think mad cow, well, how about I get information that's relatively current, let's say in the last year? Kind of want the latest and greatest about. And do we need to limit it to anything else? Let's see how many from 74 million. Let's just see what that does for us. Well, we don't have nearly as many. It doesn't even show me really. But CDC, maybe we ought to do the cdc.gov. Let's go back and limit it. That's all. Well, USDA, maybe that's good stuff too. And so you start looking at some of the results and you go, I could limit it to that. Medicineplus.gov. Yeah. But all of a sudden, you've got a lot better resources to solve that problem. So I'm trying to convince you that kids and you should use advanced search when you're not just doing something really simple. So the next question, and then let's take a second to slip down here. We're learning about the country codes. There's a site to go to. The next problem is, should we teach handwriting skill, or should we be teaching handwriting in schools? And I'm not going to go over there and Google, but I'm going to have you think about this for a second. First of all, do we want this to limit this down some so we get better results? And if so, what would you limit it to? Well, me personally, I would probably limit it to .edu for educational institutions like ksu.edu. I'm not even really picky which institution, as long as their domain name ends with .edu. And then you could put in handwriting, research, or something along those lines. But just, again, using that site and domain. Here's a question I want you to do. I want you to find what's going on in, pick a country. I don't care if it's Canada. I want you to develop some perspective. We know right now what's kind of going on in the United States. If you watch the news, read the newspapers, what's going on in Mexico, what's going on in Canada, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in China from their standpoint. How would you solve that problem? Well, hopefully you would look at it, and I kind of did this, and there's no one right answer, first of all. There are multiple right answers. Me, personally, I would probably, first of all, I would limit it to the country code. So I'm only getting results from France, for example. So you could go in and put in country code .fr. What else could you do? What would we want to do if we want to know what's going on in the United States? What resources would we look at? Well, we'd look at maybe television, maybe we'd look at print. So then what I might try to do is find the largest, and it doesn't have to be, or find multiple newspapers in that particular country, and maybe you could limit it, the language, maybe you could limit it to that domain, and then find some research. So I'm not going to show you how to solve that, but I'm telling you, you can go in and spend some time. I want you to find some and tell me what the news is and pick a country. Believe it or not, it's not the same news as what we have. And if you want to find out the intersection between our news and their news, that's even a better question. So, and here's a good one. If you're talking about global warming or whatever it is, talk about clean coal. And even the United States, compare the articles online from Fox and CNN. You can't do it all at once, but go in and compare it maybe within the last year or so and see if you're getting a slant either way. Usually you get a slant one way, you get a slant. The truth is somewhere in between. But hopefully you're kind of getting the point that I'm trying to get across. Advanced search. So are we leveraging the power of search today? You tell me. I think we could do better. I always think we can do better. So search is so powerful. And then maybe we need to look, at other search engines besides just Google. There are other ones. Bing, try Bing at or something else. My question to you is, and I know I'm from a math teacher too, have your lesson plans changed since the advent of the internet? Now some of it it's a little bit different. You go, well, how does search help me in math? And I might say, well, search maybe doesn't help as much as math as it does history or some of these kind of areas. But if nothing else, you should have access to be able to, when you're teaching something, to find information that others are doing. So do you just take what you've always done, and or do you look out there and search and try to find other lesson plans? And where would you find these lesson plans? What sites are out there? Or do I limit myself to teachers pay teachers? Or just, there's a lot more to it. Leverage the power of the internet. So I'm going to pull up another video clip here of Alan November. He is a speaker that I saw at ISTE conference this past summer, and he's going to be at Mace in March. And he was the one that got me thinking about search, and he gives a good example of what I'm trying to get across, and he does it much better, of course. So let's watch that.
There's no such thing as a perfect writer. This is why I use
Of course, we
Grammarly
have to have a
check
little
my
bit
If I'm putting commas in the
of
wrong
ads in there, because that's
learning. The other question I think is really, really important to ask is, how many assignments do we give kids that you can just look up on the internet? That are just Googleable, or Wolfram Alpha, or YouTube, or name any number of search engines. And between a combination of them, I've asked kids, what's your percentage of assignments you get that you can just find the answer? And most kids tell me between 85 and 95% are Googleable. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the kids think. And if that's close to being true, then I think one of the questions we've got to ask is, in the age of the internet, are we giving kids assignments that were invented before the internet? And maybe the real work in front of us isn't learning technology, new technologies, as much as it's figuring out how to redesign our assignments that we give kids. For example, I'll ask kids to show me where you did a search and you just found the answer, an assignment, and you got an A. So this boy, 17-year-old AP history student, says he got an A on his, what was that? His paper on the Iranian hostage crisis. And I said, well, show me the search, do the search. So he types in literally Iranian hostage crisis. I actually think that's what most kids do. They take their teacher's assignment and they type it into Google without realizing that Google can't read English or any language. So he types it in. And one of the interesting questions, again, I think teachers should ask is, what's missing? Because kids only look at the top screen of results. They're not going past that. And when you look at the Iranian hostage crisis, at least in North America, you don't get any sources from Iran. They're completely missing, and they're all Western sources. Now, before the internet, that was fine. When I taught history, there were no sources from Iran in the high school library or even the town library. So if a student wants to hand in a paper that's completely one-sided, yes, they would have gotten an A before the internet. But in an age of interconnectivity, I don't think that's right anymore. I think one of the most important skills in owning learning is, what's your quotient for global empathy? How much do you appreciate other points of view? And so in this story about the Iranian hostage crisis, I had to teach the student how to get Iranian sources. He had no idea that Google has magic words called operators, and he could use a simple word like site, S-I-T-E, and a colon, and the two-letter country code for Iran, and then he's in Iran. He had no idea. And then I said, finish the search. Now that I got him into Iran, and he types in Iranian hostage crisis. And I said, do you think the Iranians called it the Iranian hostage crisis? And you could see like deer caught, in the headlights. He just wasn't thinking. And I showed him how to look it up, and it turns out it's the conquest of the American spy den is what the Iranians call it. So the search, if you want it to be balanced, requires that you understand some of the mechanics of Google and its algorithm, and you have to get into Iran, and then it requires some critical thinking about perspective, and that you have to sort out that your perspective may not be the perspective of the dominant source of where this took place, Conquest of the American Spy Den. And when you do that kind of search, there's just no overlap between the teacher's assignment and what you actually need to pursue. So I use that as a placeholder example that my biggest concern at this moment is that we have a lot of kids who are overconfident about their use of technology. And I am convinced that there is a myth going around that digital natives really understand what they're doing. I just think that's a myth. And I think it looks like they know what they're doing, but when it comes to critical thinking and even understanding the algorithm of Google, which they use every day, they really don't know what's going on. And so I think our students need us more than ever. And it's not that they're more clever than we are about technology at all. In fact, that overconfidence that students have, I think, is quite dangerous. So I think one of the real challenges is figuring out what's the design of an assignment in the age of the internet. Match the power of all that information. And of course, the downside, as I said, is just look it up. So the example I just provided, the teacher, I think, could have said, you got to get 2 sources from Iran. The teacher could have said, and don't forget, this is the mechanics of getting Iranian sources. And I think it would have been fun in class to have the kids brainstorm, what kind of query do we use? How do we design our search? And I certainly wish there'd be more of that. So that's an interesting question, I think. What should assignments look like? Now, in another example, like in mathematics, oh my gosh, you can give me any equation to solve in K-12 curriculum, and I could just go to Wolfram Alpha and just solve the equation. So what do you do in an age of Wolfram Alpha in mathematics or physics or chemistry? And then we get into this area of, well, why not give kids messy problems? So instead of saying, what's the volume of this cup, as a colleague of mine said to students, what do you do with volume? If you were to play with volume, what problem would you solve? And oh my gosh, kids come up with fascinating examples of problems that they can design. So in the who owns the learning big question, I think part of it is helping students to design their own questions is a really, really important skill. So before the internet, kind of knowing the answer, give me the question, I'll give you the answer, based on memorization. And I'd like to think that will be less and less important. Just look it up with Siri on your cell phone. In the age of the internet, and this isn't my idea, it's other people's ideas, especially Stephen Wolfram, who developed Wolfram Alpha, we really have to teach kids to ask the most interesting questions. That's going to be a really important skill. So just to come to some logical conclusion, I think we have to get the culture right of the classroom. That's more important than getting the technology right. Technology is going to change. You're going to throw it all out anyway in 5 years or less. So I think we got to ask questions about what kind of culture do we want in our classroom? What's the locus of control? How much do we want students to own their learning? How much do we want students to design their learning? And how much do we want students to be connected globally? Because if I go back to the Iranian hostage crisis story, the teacher could correct that. But maybe there's somebody in Iran who might also participate in that experience for kids. And that's a whole other topic. How do we connect all of our classrooms to be globally connected so we can have authentic conversations? That'll be a fun one for next time.
So I have a appreciation for what Alan has to say. And I know I've been a math teacher, and if I went back to the classroom, how would I change? How do you do it when you go to wolframalpha.com and you can search and find? And then not only that, now we have the problem: can you trust the information on the internet? We have to teach kids about that. Even though you get good results, can you trust it? I mean, there's misinformation out there, and people trying to sway you one way or another. So that's a whole another question: is even the information you get, how do we trust it? And then he talked about global empathy, and I'm going to leave you on this. One of the things that I saw, and I'm not saying it's the right one, just saying there are approaches. It's called the I-5 approach. There are people out there working on 21st century lesson planning and getting started with the I-5 approach, which is the I's, all 5 I's: information, images, interacting, inquiry, and innovation. And so I'm going to provide this in the PDF that if you want to read through that, learn more about it. But it's just, it's teachers are more important than ever in classrooms, and we need to leverage the tools. I just talked about Google. I mean, YouTube. I mean, we use it all the time. Anytime you need a problem, I need a video. I had trouble getting my slides, everything to fly in the way I wanted to, so it didn't just show everything right off. I went to YouTube. That's how I solved the problem. I use YouTube. Kids use YouTube. If you're trying to fix something in your house, it's a search engine too. Wolfram Alpha is another one. I mean, for math, I can type in and get equations solved. Kids can do the same thing and learn step by step. That has consequences for the classroom too. How can we shift some things and get higher order thinking? So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and if I manage to figure out a way to do it at school, if somebody types google.com, I've got a guy working on it to see if we can, from a DNS standpoint, have it automatically go to the advanced search by default and never go straight to the little Google page. And I'm trying to get that done. If nothing else, then everybody would always end up at advanced search, because I think it's that important. Thanks for your time.